I call the Honourable Minister Simon Power.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and just wanting to respond to a couple of comments that have been made by the opposition during the course of the debate. The first is that one of the reasons that this bill was sent to the Social Services Committee was that the Justice Committee had an enormous amount of work in front of it. The neglect, ill treatment of children and any changes that could be made to the law to protect them or to extend duties for those who should be required to protect them seemed like a pretty logical subject matter for the Social Services Committee to determine, actually. And as a result of that, and the fact that the government was prepared to look for a select committee which had a like mind with respect to the issues contained in the bill, I think it emphasises actually how serious the government was about turning this matter around quickly and not having it at a committee where 4 or 5 other big pieces of legislation were rightly consuming the committee's time. And I thank the members of the Social Services Committee for their attention to this bill, and despite some of the comments that have been made by their colleagues who weren't on that committee, for the thoughtful contributions that have come from opposition members who were on that committee and the seriousness with which they have taken this matter. Could I also just take this opportunity, because I didn't in my opening remarks, to just reconfirm that this bill also deals with a change of definition to the claim of right, also deals with some changes to the issues of sexual grooming. Clause 5 amends the offence of sexual grooming for an under 16-year-old by enabling a constable to engage with a sexual offender covertly to bring that particular person to answer for their alleged offending. Lastly, I think actually Jamie Lee Ross may have been the only member to refer to this matter. I stand to be corrected, and that is part of the government's response to an emerging trend around knife crime, and in particular young people and their use of knives, is contained in new Clause 6, indicating that 2 years an offence is now going to carry a penalty of 3 years. Just wanting to comment very briefly on the ACT Party amendment that has been tabled, and I understand the reasons for the ACT Party wanting to table that amendment and to have the abhorrence that I suspect they hold the type of offending that this bill is trying to cover by wanting to place it into, loosely speaking, the 3 strikes regime portions of the Sentencing Act. Certainly understand that motivation and respect it, but the committee itself did spend some time, according to their report, considering this matter while they were working on the bill, and had this to say as part of the report back. We considered whether or not these provisions should amount to an offence subject to the 3-stage regime under sections 86 A to 86 I of the Sentencing Act 2002. All such offences, that is, the offences from those parts of that legislation, require a positive, violent or sexual act by the perpetrator, which is fundamentally inconsistent with the offence provisions contained in this bill that the committee is now considering. In effect, the distinction could be summarised as being a duty or an omission in respect of that duty versus the commission of a serious, violent or sexual offence. In other words, the committee's view was that the fit wasn't quite right in that regard, and the government accepts the advice and will be following the advice of the committee.
I call the Honourable Member